first things at Christmas time is when you're exchanging gifts with someone who has really tried hard to pick out a nice gift for you, and you're opening it up and then you find out it's the wrong gift. You know, for instance, they give you a shirt and it's the wrong size. And it's kind of awkward, you know. It's awkward to say to them, oh, you know, this is a medium and I use an extra large, and, you know, it's awkward. Or it's the wrong color. Or worse yet, you get something that you already have. Like, oh, I have 3 of these ties, you know, like that kind of stuff. Awkward moments. So what my wife and I have done, and I'm sure all of you have done similar things, is we exchange lists of things that you would like to have. And so they can pick out of that, so that when you're opening the gift, you know that is what you want. Every year without fail, on my wife's list are the true life story books. She loves reading true life story books. Whenever we want to watch a movie or something, the first question is this a true movie? Is this a real life movie? And it's always the same thing. So this story of Christmas, the shepherds out in the field, they're out at night keeping their flock, and an angel appears, speaks to them, and then there's this host of angels that comes out, and they ring out a chorus together, and they give out this message. This story is a story that comes to us by a guy named Luke in a book he wrote. So the question is, did Luke write like a kid's book? Was this some kind of Goldilocks, you know, what is it? Goldilocks and the 3 bears, or the 3 little pigs, or I mean, what is it? The Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? Is this a kid's fantasy kind of story, or is it a mystery book that he wrote, or a fantasy novel that he wrote, or is it an actual true story? Luke. So let's look at Luke. Who was this guy called Luke? So what we know about this guy, Luke was like a journalist. He was an educated guy. It says that he had a doctorate. He was educated, and this is how he starts his book out. He starts his books by saying that he did a careful search and interviewed the eyewitnesses. Now, in Jewish culture, that was a serious thing. It wasn't just one person. It was 2, 3, or more people that you would consider eyewitnesses. And he put the story together it's a documentary. What he's doing, he's narrating the evidence that he concluded and he found by actually interviewing the people and the ones that were there, interviewing the people that were eyewitnesses. So in reality, this book that Luke wrote is a documentary. Now, we call it a book, but there wasn't books back then. They would do it in scrolls. And the scrolls was these long parchment things, and they would write on it. And they could only be so long. So they had to pick. Most of the parchments were fairly the same length, because that's as far as you could write without the paper tearing and so on. So they would have to pick the very precise and most important stories. So when Luke starts his book, and he includes this story about shepherds hearing these angels, the angels speaking a message to them, he is choosing something that would have been, in his view, an important documented story. So he starts off also very specific. He says, in those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augusta. Now, anybody reading the book at those days, they would have said, yeah, I know when that was. And he said, Caesar Augusta did a decree that all should be registered, everyone from his own city. And Joseph also went up from Galilee out of the city of Nazareth into Judea to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, So this was a landmark event. This was something that 20 years later, 30 years later, people could have looked back and said, yeah, I remember that. Kind of like, imagine 20 years from now, somebody looking back and said, and you say, you remember the time when we had COVID and the government said we had to wear a mask to go into a store? And people say, yeah, I remember that. That was a crazy time. Well, he is using a landmark to specifically tell us of the story. So Luke documents the following. He says, there were shepherds keeping watch over their flock by night, and behold, an angel of the Lord stood before him, and the glory of the Lord shone around them. And the angel said to them, do not be afraid, for behold. So that word behold is kind of the title of our Candlelight, title of what we're presenting this year. Because what does that mean? What does that word behold mean? It means pay attention, listen up. This is important. It's like, you don't want to miss this. So behold, I bring to you tidings of great joy, which will be to all people. Which will be to all people. I bring you good tidings of great joy. You know, when we make supper together, my wife and I, we often watch Live at 5. And we're cooking and Live at 5 is on. And my wife has this habit of always having the remote in her hand. My wife has the remote, not me. My wife has the remote. And every time the commercial comes on, boom, she mutes it. So it doesn't matter how much money you pay to advertise at Live at 5, you're not going to catch my wife. Because as soon as they say, I got a product for you, or I have this for you, or listen to all this great stuff, boom, she mutes it. And here's the thing. I think that many times when we hear this story, the story of the birth of Christ, the story of what the angels said, we do the same as the commercial break. We mute it. We ignore it. It says, I bring you good tidings of great joy. Yeah. We mute it. But it says, great joy that will be for all people. That's you. That's you. That's you. That's me. That's all of us. The message is not just for the shepherds. It's for all people. Then it goes on and says, for unto you is born this day, unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior who is Christ. And that word Christ means the anointed one, which is a word they use to say he is the King. He is the King and the Lord. He is Savior, he is the King, and he is Lord. Is this true? Is it true? Is this story a true story? Is it really something that happened? Because if it did, then this person that we call Jesus that was born, he is a Savior to all people, to you and to me. He is King and he is Lord. And it says, when the angels had gone away, the shepherds said to one another, let us go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has come to pass, which the Lord has made known to us. In other words, what they were saying is, let's check it out. Let's check it out. And here's my challenge to you this Christmas. Here's my challenge to you. This Christmas, unmute the remote button of your heart and open up yourself and say, wait a minute, behold, let's check this out. This is important. If true, this is important. Let's check this Jesus out. Is he really the Christ? Is he really the King? Is he really Lord? So here are my suggestions. My challenge to you is this Christmas, actually open up and check it out. And here's a few ways you can do that. Here's one. Make a New Year's resolution to read the book of Luke for yourself. It's easy to do. You can do a search on Google, on the internet, and you can look for Gospel of Luke. and you'll find all kinds of versions and copies, because originally Luke wrote it in Greek and it's translated into Spanish, French, and English. And there's all kinds of modern translations, up-to-date older kind of English. Doesn't matter. The story is the story. But my challenge to you is New Year's resolution, I'm going to read the book of Luke. Better yet, my second proposal, they said, let us. They said, let us. So my second proposal is, why don't you invite someone to read the Gospel of Luke with you? Now, here at Smythe Street Church, we're all going to read the Gospel of Luke together. If you want me to read it with you, and we just every so often have a little discussion, an email back and forth, or a text, I'm inviting you, if you want to read it with me, and we kind of hold each other accountable and read it together, let me know. You say, well, what's your email? Find me. Look for me. Just like the shepherds went looking for Jesus in Bethlehem, do a little effort on your part and say, hey, I want to reach out to you and I want to do it with you. And I'll be glad. I will respond and we will do it together. But there's a third option. If you wanted to really add to your search, to your investigation, we're having an Alpha in January. An Alpha is a fantastic opportunity for you to go and ask the hard questions. How do you know Jesus really existed? Who wrote the Bible? Anyway, how do you know that this is real? And you can ask, and no one's going to say, oh, you can't ask that question, because that is what it's about. It's exploring Jesus. It's exploring Christianity. If anything, just come the first night. There's a supper, and then there's discussion and an opportunity. And if you don't like it, don't come back. But at least you can say, I checked it out. I checked out Jesus. So here are my options again. Read the rest of Luke's book and ask God, just say, God, if you're real, and this is true that Jesus is Savior, He is King, He is Lord, I want to discover that. Or number two, get someone to read it with you. And number three, and later on they'll tell you more about the Alpha course, just think about the opportunity to at least once in your life do a deep dive into who is Jesus and what is Christianity. So here's what the angel says. Behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which will be to all people. That's you and me. For there is born to you this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ, the King, the Lord.